Hi there, David Taylor or Mr Pelargonium, back with another video for the Pelargonium and Geranium Society. Now look what I've got. I've got a basket. Today I'm going to pot up a hanging basket. It's a 17-inch basket actually. What we're going to do, I am just going to pot this up for you. I suppose it's a bit of a beginner's video, but I'm sure a few more experienced growers may appreciate it. Just a little look into how I go about doing it. Now I've got a fair number of plants to go in. I've got about 5 or 6 Ivyleaf Pelargoniums to go around the outside. They will, during the summer, as it progresses, all grow down the outside of it. In the middle, I'm going to put a few Stellas, a few Stellar Pelargoniums, which will grow up through the centre to make it hopefully a really good display as the summer progresses. Now, I'm filming this on I think it's the 12th today, Tuesday the 12th of April. I'm doing this now primarily for the plants to be able to grow on to about the turn of May, June, which in the UK we always say is about the time where you can sort of safely put tender plants outside. But I pot these up now, I plant these up now primarily to give them a good bit of growing time to make a relatively decent basket by the time we come to that period. Right, so what I'm going to do, I'm going to use a specific compost that I have made for hanging baskets. I actually don't use quite as much drainage material for my hanging baskets. About 80% of compost and 20% of drainage material. Now, realistically, for my potted plants in the glass house, I actually use about 30% of drainage material. But for these hanging baskets, which are going to get a very, very dense sort of, multi-plant root system going on, they need something just a little bit more dense. So I've got about 20% drainage material. That drainage material is made up of perlite and horticultural sand in this case, but 80% of whatever the compost is that you use. Generally a sort of relatively light compost. I like to use a light compost for hanging baskets, but that choice of course either peat or peat based or non-peat based, entirely up to you. So there we are. Let's just get on for it. I'll just close up a little bit more so you can get a bit of an idea of what I'm getting up to. So the first thing I'm going to do is obviously load up the basket with compost. It's just a good wedge in there. Now obviously a basket of this size is going to take quite a bit of compost. So we're probably getting up to about the level of sort of the depth of the pots that you're going to be putting in there. Now we'll talk a little bit about, obviously Ivyleaf Pelargoniums are the, if you like, almost the mainstay of hanging baskets. I get a number of people comment on the YouTube channels over the years, my Ivyleaf Pelargoniums aren't doing very well, they're yellowing up and getting in all kinds of mess. The thing to remember about Ivyleaf Pelargoniums is that they are very, very drought tolerant. Because they've got these very thick, here's an example, one of the ones I'm going to use here, they've got a very thick, dense leaf, and they are designed for drought tolerance. They do not need to be overwatered. Most of these are derived from the species Pelargonium paltatum. They came from areas in South Africa that were very dry. If you keep them on the dry side, the ivies will always flourish. This basket is not going to need to be watered very much at all, particularly in this early stage when we're going to be freshly potted up, because these roots are going to take a long time to get down into this compost. So, this compost could remain technically very wet if you really flooded this basket full of water. So we don't want to be doing that. So, and I'll obviously show you the initial watering just when we're fully potted up here. But there we are. I've got a base layer in there now. I'm just going to have a look to see where we are in terms of the depth of the pot relative to the depth of the compost at the moment. There we go. So that's about where I want it. Just juggle it down a bit. Right, so I mean, this is a white double. I mean, Blanche Roche, very, very common variety, but a very good grower, very strong grower, semi-double. So the white round the outside will make a good contrast to basically lilac colours of various shades in the centre. So I just pull them out. Got a good root system. It's relatively immature, only just got hold of these. I might just give the little base of the roots a little tickle out just to get them moving. Now what I often do, where I place these, I just grab a handful of compost just to make it a little bit easier, bash it up against the side and then stick that up against it. That's a little idea that you could do if you wish. Obviously this liner has been pushed down hard into the base of the actual basket just so that it's pushed right down. But yeah, so I've got 5 of these actually. I thought I may have had 6. So I'm going to more or less calculate out. I say just put a handful there, then it saves you having to backfill against the actual plant. Good root system on these. Just beginning to fill the pot, which is ideal really. That one's quite dry actually, but that plant is really quite bone dry, but the root's strong and you would never know any difference at all between them. But it's clearly that plant has not been able to get any moisture obviously for several days, but it's as happy as Larry. Always remember that with Ivyleaf Pelargoniums. And there we are. All their sort of growing balance is towards the outside. I've placed them so that they are all sort of leaning marginally outwards, which is sort of how you want it really. Always put plenty of plants in your baskets, otherwise you could end up with a basket that's not going to have much impact until maybe mid to late summer. You want these to be putting on a really good display early, don't you? So, put plenty in, but 5 is certainly enough for the outside of this plant. And for the outside of this basket. Now, while I've got a bit of room, before I put these centre ones in, I'm just going to infill some of these gaps. It's just a question of getting your hands in, getting your hands dirty. Right, so we've got 3. Now this plant here, this is actually a seedling from Robin Louise, or Robin Louise as I just call it these days. This is the original Robin Louise as a Stella. And I took this seedling, but it came through, I think I spoke about it last year in some of my videos. The bloom is actually just marginally darker, but the rest of the plant is virtually identical. But because it's a seedling, and this is first generation cutting, this is very vigorous. It would lose some of this vigour eventually. Just put my bins down there, so don't worry that I'm just chucking it on the floor. So we'll overarch this into here. It is in the centre. But I'm just putting this almost in between these 2 ivies here. And we'll do the same on that side and the same on that side with the other plants. So I've just arched that over. I mean, it's quite a big plant. That should make a really good display. I've got my Pelphy Lilac Rose here, which I bought from somebody at the PAGS AGM. Very good root system. He's certainly ready to be potted on, this one. Nice and tight. I'll just unbuckle the root. Oh, there we are. I've just packed that down in there. That one's going to be throwing a lilac bloom. And then on the other side here, we've got this. This is one of the plants that I've been trialling of Steve Pollard's. It's got a lovely white raising to lilac bloom I actually really love these. He's got a couple of these that I'm trialing, and this one will go down and just sort of lean. It's got quite a long stem, so I'm just pulling that down a bit. So that it stem, easing that down. There we are. So that one can sort of grow out that way. We've got this one, the Robin Louise seedling going out that way. And we've got the sort of another ivy. I know it's another ivy, but lilac rose growing out that way. So we're basically all bases covered. So now it's a question of just backfilling a bit with the compost, and I'll be really quite happy with this basket. Here we are. I'm just easing it round really with my fingers. If you see a lot of corking on the underside of your Ivyleaf Pelargoniums, that is down to overwatering. I can't think of the name of it offhand. I will put it on the video now. It's because they cannot transpire all of the liquid that they may get from their roots if you're overwatering them. And so you get this corking on the underside of the leaves. It's not really that serious, but it does mottle the leaves a little bit on the ivies. One or two other plants, zonals do it slightly. One or two other plants do it slightly as well, but it really gets shown really badly on Ivyleaf Pelargoniums. Just something to look out for. Right, now I think I'm relatively happy with this. We've got plenty of compost on there. Now, once it really does get growing, I may, if we get any stems that are really growing wayward, I may give them a pinch. But you don't have to do that. Maybe only consider doing that if you've got stems that are really growing outwards and growing really out of tune with the rest of the basket. Because, of course, you want them to grow fast. You want them to really grow out and start hanging down the side of the basket. So, you know, I wouldn't normally as a rule pinch anything here now. There's no real need. Everything is growing relatively bushy anyway. Now, watering. I said more or less at the beginning that this will not need a lot of water because we've got a huge, great, dense ball of compost here with no root in it. And these roots need to go out and search, so you need to keep this compost relatively dry. Okay, so all I'm going to do, I've got just some plain water here, and I'm just going to dab a little bit around the sort of base of the plants, and that's going to be it. I am not going to overdo it at all, and until these plants become established, which will take, well, a good month, that'll do. That's all I'm going to do. So we plop that down. And that really is it. I will actually, I mean, you can probably see the windows are steaming up. The sun's coming out, so it's getting quite warm in here now. I will probably hang this up outside initially because, as I've said, the weather in the UK at the moment is just turning fairly warm. So there's no concern at all with night temperatures or anything like that. But if a cool night was forecast, I would just bring it in the glass house and hang it up overnight. But there we are. That's more or less how I do it. A few tips there that hopefully you've been able to take on board. This should grow relatively fast now, and I'll perhaps show you it, you know, as the season progresses outside. It will be put ultimately in an easterly elevation, so it will get sun in the morning and then a bit of shade in the afternoon when it gets really particularly warm during, say, an English summer. So there we are. That's our hanging basket and how I go about potting them up. I've got an awful lot of videos that I'm filming about 3 or 4 today, so there's plenty up and coming. So maybe think about subscribing if you're not a subscriber to the channel, and I'll hopefully see you again very, very soon. Bye bye for now.